It's just that we don't allow, we think grief has a time limit. And
Yeah.
so often, I found that after Zeta died, people
Mm,
would say to me, with good intentions, I think, that, when their dad died, their mum was really sad for 2 years and then she was better. And I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. She just learn to live with you learn to live with your grief, and it's a different sort of way that express it, and then you realize that people aren't as
mm,
interested. They just want to they don't want to see you sad. People don't want to see me
mm,
feeling sad about Zeta's death 19 years ago. And to be fair, it's a different
mm.
kind of sadness, a
Yes.
different kind of loss, because I'm
Yeah.
so fortunate. I've got a wonderful wife and two amazing kids now,
Mm,
and that's like, which I never imagined
mm,
happening after Zeta
mm.
dying. But that was a pivotal moment in my life.
Most of my guests hold a very special place in my heart because of someone that we have known from the past, and so it's always really good to see you.
Thank you so much, Ivan. And that's the thing. We've known each other probably 25 years through my late wife, Zeta. And through that, over the years, our lives have intersected. I mean, you realize you look out for people who are special, like yourself, and you
Oh,
want
thank you.
people to kind of get through their trials and tribulations of life and the
Mm,
tragedies of life.
mm.
And it's really good to see you flourishing. And I feel like I'm flourishing as well,
As
despite our
absolutely.
tragedies.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge Zita as well
Mm.
because, like, even though I met her at the very early of my mental health sector career, she definitely played a big part of instill some wisdom and knowledge for me to believe myself. And until today, some of the things sometimes, like, I don't know whether I can do it. I can still remember she say, fake it until you make it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Zeta was really special. So we were married 10 years, 11 years. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember. It's such a long time ago now. And her life had lots of trials and tribulations,
Mm.
and she ended up leaving a professional job and becoming a peer support worker, which
Yes.
filled her cup so much. And that
Mm.
was when she got to meet you. And I know that was a really meaningful part of her life, putting in her corporate hat, but into a
Mm.
world of connection, and realizing how important that was for people who us, are living with a mental illness, say, or
Mm.
just struggling, it can be a real struggle, and not being heard and listened to. And the concept of having somebody that you can engage and connect with is just so important.
Yeah, and especially from the work that you're doing as well, I really want to acknowledge too. I mean, having your lived experience to support other bereaved
Mm.
family or individual, which is the groups that you started.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, actually, Zeta started Solace Support Group.
Ah,
Both her sisters had died by suicide
that's right.
before her, and then
Yeah.
when she tragically died by suicide in 2006, I took over
Wow.
being an active member of Solace Support Group. It was something that
Wow.
was her space that she used,
Wow.
and enabled people to come and join together in a peer support model.
Wow.
So it's been running since 2001, and it's an amazing place for people bereaved by suicide, no matter how long ago your loss might have been,
That's
or
right.
your connection, who that person was to you. Operate once a month at the community of St. Luke, 130 Remuera Road, and we're there to meet and connect
Wow.
and get to hear people's stories, laugh
Yes.
as much as we
Yes.
sometimes cry,
Yeah.
and remember, get to say the name of your loved one,
Absolutely. Yeah.
because there's that silence that sits with suicide. And certainly when you're grieving and you've lost a family member, and as the years go by, you live with that loss, but
Mhm.
it feels like sometimes that the rest of the world's just barreling on, and you just want to say their name. So
That's
for
right.
many people, it's the first time they say the name of their loved one out
Wow.
loud in a long time. So it's really powerful.
In the public as well, especially, yeah, because it holds such a sad space, even for people
Mm.
grieving at the same time. It's not just about they individually grieve, but it's the worry that what happened if I, like sing and then somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't allow, we think grief has a time limit. And
Yeah.
so often, I found that, after Zeta died, people
Mm,
would say to me, with good intentions, I think that, when their dad died, their mum was really sad for 2 years and then she was better. And I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. She just learn to live with you learn to live with your grief, and it's a different sort of way that express it, and then you realize that people aren't as interested. They just they don't want to see you sad, and people don't want to see me feeling sad about Zeta's death 19 years ago. And to be fair, it's a different kind of sadness,
Yes.
a different kind of loss, because I'm so fortunate. I've got a wonderful wife and 2 amazing kids now, and that's like, which I never imagined happening after Zeta dying. But that was a pivotal moment in my life. And I think by giving back and sharing and showing that, life can, continue, and the struggle of living with loss is a really profound thing. And suicide loss just has another little twist in the tail. Twist in the tail, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, to be honest, I'm so interested to talk to you. First is through your own lived experience, which I also myself lost my nephew as well through suicide, unfortunately. However, I felt like as a society as a whole, we don't necessarily understand how to even have a conversation with someone who just lost their loved one. But before we go into that, I'm really keen to hear more about how the Solace group, because I didn't know Zeta was the one who set it up.
Yeah, well, she had attended a group that existed with another agency, and they put that into recess in the year 2000, I think. And so Zeta, along with a couple of other amazing people, decided, but this group needs to keep going.
Yes.
And I remember Zeta going to the community of St. Luke and finding that place. So, and here we are 25 years later, still using that special place. So when I go to the meetings, I kind of sense her presence, it's an important connecting place. That was a place that she had been to, that she found and enabled this group to grow. And it was interesting because she saw the benefit of peer support group, and it wasn't until she died that I realized, it could be a useful thing for me as well. So I sort of became more involved, and now it's just a integrated part of my life, which is really good. So I think I have quite good boundary setting about it. Where I'm there, I'm present, I do the facilitation of the meetings once a month. I'll take phone calls and messages from people during the month who find us and find out about us and want to know more, and have a chat with them. And then we have our meetings, and we really encourage people to do the really good things about self-care and finding, places like Ayaki Tara, which are amazing, good therapeutic support and well-being support. So huge fan of peer support groups and what they can bring and how they can enrich people's lives.
Absolutely.
We can't necessarily make you feel better, but at least you don't feel alone, because grief and loneliness are traveling companions so often.
Wow.
And there's nothing worse than feeling like nobody really understands. And I think when we have our meetings, people who are bereaved can hear the story of other bereaved people and go, I connect with that. I understand that. That happens to me. I found that, and that's the power of connection, the power of peer support. So, yeah.
And the beauty of it is because it's, to be honest, when I say the beauty of it, I mean, because it's not funded by any agency at all. That's why I kind of believe that sometimes it's a good thing, because that means that it's authentically peer support.
Yeah, I mean, over the time we've thought about, should we register as a charity? Do we need to seek out funding? But then we kind of just manage to get by, and the people that attend will choose to donate money to us, and we're really lucky. We get the community of St. Luke is a beautiful supporter of our work, so we don't have to pay for the rental of that. We provide the morning tea and all that kind of stuff, and we run an annual candle lighting ceremony, which is an opportunity for us to raise money.
Yes.
But I think it's simpler for us. There's not the pressure on, because it's not just me. I happen to be the facilitator, but there's 3 other amazing people on the committee, and we managed to kind of join together collectively to make this happen every month. And it's about giving back to the community, and I see the growth and development in people, even though sometimes it's really hard for them to see themselves feeling better or just getting through the slog of life. But at least we can acknowledge that and do that. And doing that and without any funding or reporting, all the kind of complex stuff that often goes with that can just feels like I haven't got enough time to really do all of that, whereas I've got time for the people.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's about.
Yeah. And that's why I really respect that. It's all done voluntarily with you and a group of people and really contribute and wanting to make a genuine change. And
and I think the lived experience of us all on the committee is critically important. It feels believable that because I've been bereaved by suicide, I know and understand that. And earlier on, we had another person facilitate a bit who wasn't bereaved by suicide and just didn't connect in the way that people want. And people often just want to meet somebody. And I think about my life experience getting to meet somebody like you. There can be little gifts from this awful life experience of connecting with others. And, you hear people when we go around the room and talk about what's happening in our life and who we are and who we've lost and how we're just doing our best. You go, that's really cool. They live near me. And then people will join up and go for a walk along a beach or their dogs and do activities. And I think that is the power of this group. It's not necessarily about me, but we in the committee allow people to turn up and be present, feel safe in talking about their loss and safe being heard. And it can be hard, because there can be people who are relatively soon on from their loss who are still just unsure about what has just happened to them. Then there'll be people like myself who are nearly 20 years on from where you just do have a different perspective, how somebody died and what was leading them to that tragic moment. And I feel like I'm sort of at peace with all of that. I don't feel the frustration and the anger that some people might feel. And that's valid if they feel that they've been let down by whatever it is and that in their loved one's life. But it can be a really hold people in a place when actually, we just have to go with life and pick up the good things and shed some of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
I think,
I think it's very powerful, as simple as it is. That sounds like people's like, but I know it's so hard, especially for bereaved individual to be seen and even to be authentically able to express how they felt. But not just that, also having people who understand where they're coming from. I mean, like you can talk to therapy, but if they haven't had that understanding, they wouldn't understand the pain, the grief, because it's not just a cut. It's a cut that deep, and that knife probably for some people they can still feel it.
Yeah,
it is not just and so having that space, I think that is amazing.
I think it is. I'm a huge fan of peer support. I think it can be that perfect thing in your kit of self-care stuff, and it can be you learn that you're not alone.
Yes,
because loneliness and suicide grief travel constant companions. And there's so much judgment about suicide and the language of suicide, and then people will look to blame whatever. So it's quite good to be able to come together as a group and get to see people at different understandings of that. And then there's the big spiritual thing about life and death and what could make somebody take their life. It feels, for me, who's never been in a place like that, it's a really complex thing to learn and understand. So I think it's about having these conversations in a safe setting where you feel that you can express that kind of stuff and that you will be validated, you'll be acknowledged. One of the many benefits of it. And we do laugh a lot. We do laugh because people remember and reflect on their loved one and the positive things and who they were as about them as a whole person, not about this awful event that might have happened. For some, there's been a lead up to that, which was really difficult. And for others, there was none of that. And it was that suddenness of this awful things. Really lean into hearing about who your loved one is and
as a whole person.
And that's just so important, because, and you see people, physically feel better. They sort of, just by having that moment to talk about who they were, what they did, and what joy they brought to them and their family, despite some of the stuff that was traveling with them as well. So it's every month I learn something new about suicidal behavior and thinking and the impact of suicide, and I kind of am always in awe of people's ability to articulate what that feels like. And I think that's a really good thing for others to hear and to mirror some of the positive stuff.
Wow.
Occasionally I might have to direct a conversation away from something. We're not an advocacy service. We're all about, how are you doing in life at the moment? We're not about trying to change mental health system or all that kind of stuff. And for some families, that's kind of, they want that. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, we're not, because that's too much for us as a committee to do. And it's, but we're here to listen and support you. And there's so many similarities. That's the thing. Most people come along, they think that their experience is unique. And it's like, somebody says, I'm sitting at my computer at work. I have to go back to work and got tears running down my cheeks and nobody's saying anything to me. And everyone in the room will go, yeah, that happened to me. I've been there. I've done that. And it's, it's not changing anything, but you feel like, okay, this is happening. Or I'm driving to work and I just can't stop crying. And I've got the radio up really loud because my loved one's favorite song is playing. And it's all these really, just, it's just heartbreaking, but it's also the power of that connection with that loved one. And we want those. We want to keep those, because the fear for many people when they see somebody like me who's nearly 20 years on is that I'll forget who they were, and you just never forget. That is the 100% assurity of things. You'll never forget. And that's can be a comfort. Because you're often battling in the early days of wanting to be tethered to that grief, when actually it's about being tethered to the person and the good stuff. So
I have so many things I want to unpack, but sharing what you described is just amazing. But I want to start from you talk about the grief and the loneliness, because I think that's very important for people who probably don't understand or haven't experienced themselves. And do you want to explain?
Yes. What I would, hopefully people who are listening who haven't had a first-hand experience but know somebody who is grieving, is ask them about their loved one. And it may feel really hard to do that. And some days that person will want to respond to you in a way that, and tell that story. But they equally may not.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's the thing, is you're acknowledging that person and not acknowledging that experience. It wasn't something that happened a couple of years ago. It's something they're traveling with. That they still, it was an experience that might have happened in the past, but it's still with them.
Exactly.
And I get so much joy when, some of Zeta's friends might say, oh, I've just made some marmalade, a recipe that Zeta gave me 30 years ago. Okay, that just fills me up. I just go, that's amazing to think that the little simple things in life is actually something that she instigated, and the meaning that it has to somebody in the here and now that's the joy, that's the gift, and that's the connection. I hope that people can kind of get, and that all of us have a role in asking after somebody. And it can be scary, it can be frightening, but I've become so used to asking people now that it's normalized for me. Almost always people want to share, they want to, and so remember that person's birthday. Doesn't have to be always the death day. For some people that's important too, but if you know a birthday, do that. It's hard for bringing people in, particularly if I hear from parents who've lost a teenager and they find it really hard going to those events
Mm,
that
mm,
their teenager would have been at as well, like the
mm,
21st of their best
mm.
son's best mates. And there's a lot of angst about going to those sort of things. And when people go, it's so, so, so hard, but it's so brave of them to do that. So it's acknowledging that, I say to them, you can go for a short time, but it's part of re-emerging into the world. And it's so difficult to do. But I think all of us need to connect with those people who are bereaved and keep doing that. And sometimes it's hard because sometimes they just may not want that there.
I hear you because there's a lot of people fear is like, should I ask or should I not ask? You pointed out that person would know whether they're ready to talk about it or not. If they're not ready, they will say, I really appreciate it. But next time.
Yeah, and you might be able to do it via text or a wee email or something.
Exactly.
So then it's keeping that communication open because it is hard for people because they feel they're exhausted by grief.
Yes.
There's possibly a bit of embarrassment about creating a scene and having this dramatic thing happen in their lives. And they know that the talk of the community is whatever it is, about, and there's still all the stigma around suicide about it being selfish. And what we do know about suicide and the suicidal mind is that it's a way to escape a very awful pain, I guess, for want of a better word, at that particular moment.
I agree. Yeah. That they can't see the way out as well.
I know. And there's always a little, it's not as hard, as fast as that. For some people, it's a whole different thing, but generally it's about it's like, what was it coined back in the 60s? It's like a psych ache. They have, their whole psyche is just broken at that particular time. And that's the awful frustration. It's like sand running through your fingers, it's just like you couldn't hold on to them. And that's such a challenge,
And I agree with you as well, because I think people don't understand when they think about emotional pain. For people who, like myself, with lived experience, anxiety and depression, emotional pain is not just imagination, it's my whole body pain that's so heavy that I have to carry tons of weight, which is not like I do kickboxing. If I have something, that's what I can bear with those pain. Emotional pain sometimes is so bad that just you can't even see it. It's like, how do you address it? So we're not normalizing it, but we want people to understand, to put up, like saying that person, labeling them, but just to acknowledge that they were in such a difficult situation at the time.
Exactly. And thank you for that. It's a beautiful description of your experience of depression and anxiety. One of the critical things, I think, if you are supporting somebody, is to be able to listen, to be able to hear that.
Yes.
Not try and fix them. Those were the things that used to make me mad. People with good intentions were trying to justify what happened. And it's just like, you just got to be there safely doing that. And also, if you are supporting somebody and you're finding it overwhelming, you can seek support. Make sure you doing that good self-care stuff, going for the walk, doing the kickboxing, whatever it is that you do.
Yes.
It's tough.
It is.
Really tough. It's really tough.
And I like what you're saying as well, because I want to carry on about that. Like what you say is always leave that door open. Don't shut it just because, and let them know that door always opened in the end of the day. And always, like I know a lot of people when they doing some action, should I invite, because let them know you're still thinking about and acknowledge that relationship will still carry on, isn't it? Not just cease just because that person. Yeah.
I know that I found it really hard. I remember going to the first wedding after Zeta died of a friend and she wasn't there. And I just remember being in tears, because it just felt so wrong that she wasn't there, or the first major family event without her. But it was lovely when people acknowledged her not being there. It's about that acknowledgement. It's not about pretending it didn't happen. And those are the things we find that with the lead up to Christmas particularly, it's such a focus on family. And if you're a family that's missing somebody, it's the hardest thing in the world to put on the smile and do stuff. But, and we spend a lot of time in the months leading up to that talking about what works well for different people and their families. How do they deal with a Christmas without their loved one.
And I like what you just mentioned because it's so important. If people don't mention the name, you feel even more shunted from that situations. But when someone mentioned it immediately, you know you still included the person who left as well. So you know they acknowledge and embrace me even though I'm here by myself. And that lead me to another questions as well, which is I forget. Yes, I remember because you mentioned something about people who have gone back to work and then and suddenly they just the flood of grief and then they tearing up, and that's what people now don't know how to do it. I felt like just gently say, look, I'm here. I mean, because I know when people in a public area when they start crying, and then when people didn't respond, that individual felt like, am I too much?
It's so common, Matt. It's such a thing, and it's really difficult because you end up realizing the things that people witter on about in the workplace really begin to grind your gears. You get really annoyed at the stupid, meaningless small talk, so you can become that angry person at work as well. So it's like, how do you shift that? How do you block the chatter of the noise of a workplace, and how do you kind of deal with that boss that you never particularly liked before suddenly becomes really, really annoying? But equally, I hear incredible stories of workplaces that are so kind and supportive and caring, so it's trying to find that happy place where, you are you, and it's not forever that you're going to be working like this. And it's like, unfortunately, you have to be quite honest sometimes, and that can be hard. It can be like saying, hey, I'm struggling with work at the moment. Can I look at easing back into work for a bit? Can I do a little bit of work from home, or can I take myself home at a particular time and know that it's not going to be forever, but it might feel like you've got a little bit of control.
Yeah.
And hopefully a workplace can adapt to that. So that's the thing of trying to kind of get yourself into a place where it's okay going to work. Many people end up changing a job because they actually like going to a new job where they don't have to tell their story. They can be just Mark from, who's just turned up, and it's not about Mark who's lost his wife to suicide, So that can be an option, but it's like we hear these kind of stories very frequently about the challenges of workplaces. But equally, I hear a lot about how good a workplace can be. It's another hard, tough conversation to have. And if you're fortunate enough to have an HR department, hopefully they're going to be looking after you anyway, be aware of the challenges of getting you back into work. And before you come back to work, you might want to ease into it. You might want to pop into an office, say hi, be working to people. So day one isn't too bad. You can say, hey, I don't want a fuss to be made. I'm just coming back in. So, and that can be shared with people. You can take a little bit of control, but it's tough.
And I want to acknowledge even early on, you say about, like people kind of put a timeline on how grief should be managed. And especially when you lost someone, like from suicide, it's not so easy that any grief actually. Yeah. I mean, the workplace can be more flexible and understand that as a human being.
Yes.
They are not a machine. You can just put it and then the clock is going to work. They facing enormous hardship and emotional, challenge. At least what the workplace can do is to value that staff who've been there and know that they human being like everybody else, and better support that individual and let them know you're welcome back. But we also want to acknowledge what you lost.
Yes. It is. It's so true. You've said it beautifully, as a human being, and we bring our whole selves to work, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, And this is one of the more difficult events. And I think there's a greater understanding in the workplace now than back in time about that impact. So, and it might need to be led by you if you're the grieving person, but equally, hopefully your workplace has some good policies about engaging with you to make sure that you're doing okay, or what you feel would be quite good. And it's a bit of negotiation. It doesn't mean to say that
Yeah.
If you say, I only want to work 2 days a week now, well, that might be a bit hard. But if you can kind of say, well, maybe for the short while I can do this, and then I'll gradually build up, that can be, generally speaking, I think.
Yeah, like what you say, it's not long term as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's an important thing. And I think most people find too that there'll be somebody in the workplace that has had a similar experience that you never knew. And suddenly you've got a bit of a support person there or somebody you can connect with.
And one of the hope that I really wanted to have a conversation with you, because often people don't know how to talk about if they have lost from suicide. If they talk about it, people also don't seem to know then how should they respond or react. Especially depends on certain ethnicity as well, like the response must be very, very different, and some probably not even able to honest about how that person passed away.
It is, and from my observation, so many cultures do it so differently. Some are amazing. Some I go, oh, that's interesting. That wouldn't be necessarily my thing, but it's about what's right for you. So if you feel that that's the way that you've got to talk about it, we have people who can't admit that it's a suicide, and that's fine. I would, begin to question why they've done that. And oftentimes it's that this is too difficult to say the S word. And once you begin saying it's an accident, it's really hard to suddenly turn it around. So those are things that I think through therapy and what have you could probably help change that. But equally, it's, it impacts hundreds and hundreds of people. Each suicide has an incredible ripple effect. So there'll be people in your life that you didn't know have been impacted by suicide. So you don't need to feel alone with that. You don't need to feel ashamed of what's happened. There's no shame, but it's because by opening up and being able to talk, you might learn so much, which is what I found. I learned so much from other people's loss and able to kind of bring that into my own life. I'm a bit of an external processor, so it's quite different. For some people, they just can't, and I get that. And you don't have to go around saying, "Hi, my name's Mark. I'm suicide bereaved." But at times it might be you might be better in a one-on-one situation saying, "This is what's happened," and that's cool. So you've got to work out what's right for you.
And shame is such a big factor, isn't it, when it comes to suicide? And I like the fact is you say, like with the Solos group, you don't just talking about that as like one-off incident. Actually, you celebrate the whole person. And so you encourage people to think about that person's, who they are and how you celebrate them. Do you want to share a little bit more what that means?
At Solos, we have a photo album so people can bring the photo of their loved one. So we get to know who they are. We hear about them, and then we get to see them.
Wow.
And it's a special taonga, it's this photo album we've had for 20 years. So some of the people who came along at the beginning aren't part of the group anymore, but it's it's as simple as just reflecting on, people might bring some poetry or something that their loved one wrote when they were a small kid or something, which feels like a really profound piece of who they were. So it's really good to be able to share that, because they know that they can share that in a group where people are going to give them a hug and kind of go, my God, that's amazing, and not think it's weird. Normalizes our responses to how we honor our loved ones. And for some people, they might think, this is a bit crazy, but I do X, Y, Z. And you kind of go, that's sweet. That's you do you. Exactly. And as long as you make it safe and that it feels good to you, go for it. Because there's no norms here. And often what we find is people worry about what to do with the ashes or the possessions of their loved one. And that can be a real challenge. And again, everyone does that differently. And it's good to hear that everyone does it differently. And the time and when you do something is purely up to you. I only scattered Zeta's ashes at about year 15. Just felt right to do it at that point, and that's fine. That's where some people make a big deal out of it quite early on, and other people want to do a really big elaborate ceremony with lots of people, and that's great too.
Why those moments were so important, because If someone who died naturally, people is going to talk about their life and all that. But if someone who died by suicide, suddenly that person is like disappear. Not even their past was mentioned. And what you are saying is everybody need to be celebrated. Not at the final moment how they left, but as a person who have lived on the earth with a footprint.
And the danger with suicide is that we've got to not glamorize the act of suicide,
Exactly.
but rather, and it's a really tough thing when you're talking about young people dying, perhaps in a school environment or in a big sort of social networks, and the way that people are on social media now. It's got to be done in a way that isn't going to elevate risk amongst others, because we know the risk of copycat or contagion is very real. And that's a hard thing when you're a parent, you're just coping with your loss, and then you're realizing that that loss could impact on many people in that community as well. And it's a whole new thing that you're exposed to, which is the potential of copycat. So you end up having to be really mindful of the challenge of how you memorialize your loved one.
I hear you, because it might trigger other people who already have those thoughts. What I hear from you is when people die naturally, what we do is as a family, we still mention the name about what that person does, how stupid they might be sometime, and have that funny moment, can still do that.
Absolutely. And that might not come as quickly as some other way, but it does reappear. It does appear.
Yeah.
It is part of keeping their memory alive, whether through rituals at particular family events, acknowledging them, their absence at significant events, but also just talking about them.
Yeah.
And in a very real here and now. So that continuing bond, which is a really powerful.
Yes.
And it is about hope and recovery. It's about there is a future without them, and you don't want anyone else to go through this awful experience. And one of the ways you can do that is by being respectful around what you share on social media about their death, unfortunately. And that's, even though you might be angry because you feel let down by whatever was happening in their life, but it's about remembering them as a person, not how they died.
And also, there's so many things that you say, Mark, is so important, and even including timing. People know when it's time to do certain things that they're ready for, and there's no right way or wrong way. When the loved one decided, now I feel better, I like to celebrate certain things, including how to deal with ashes, and even when they might be not ready to talk to their loved one yet, it's okay. The heart will never be lighter, but it's just the air seems to be a bit easier to breathe. And when they finally find that breath, then they can share a little bit more, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there is no real rule book and when that's going to be. I see it in the solace group, people come along, and often they find, they've met their family, because everyone gets them, and life, they might turn up for a year or 2 years. Then they'll say to me, I think I've done my time here now. And it's the best thing. It's always sad. It's always tears, but it's like, isn't that great that you feel confident enough not to have to come along to a meeting every month, but you might drop in from time to time or go to the candle lighting ceremony.
Wow.
Which it's, and they've made friends. I've made lifelong friends from that group.
Wow.
Through this shared experience, but the friendship has grown. It's more than what happened to us. It's a part of our initial connector. So you realize, it's,
that's amazing.
It's giving yourself permission to do that. And it's hard. Man, that's hard,
Yeah, of course.
And it's hard sometimes hearing other people's stories, because if we can get 20 plus people there sometimes. So you can imagine hearing 20 stories about a loved one who's no longer here. It can feel a bit intense.
Yeah.
So, we try and insert a bit of humor, and some of the people who've been for a while kind of are able to do that, to find that ability to laugh, because laughter and tears are just coexist. So much of our behaviors are all about, happiness and sadness are, they go together.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we have to allow that. There's
Mm.
nothing wrong with laughter. There's nothing wrong with tears. There's nothing wrong with anger, but you also need to have the other flip side to that. You need to think about those people left in your world, other family members, and think making the most of your time with them as well. Doing that while you're grieving. And that's the hard thing that I hear from parents who've lost a child and worrying about the other siblings.
Oh, absolutely.
Worrying about, interpreting their behavior and how a 19-year-old male grieves might be quite different to how, a 32-year-old female grieves. It feels like you're walking on eggshells.
And especially like what you say, the parents, they're handling their grief, but also they are ensuring that their kids are doing okay. Yeah. That's
and
not
I'm
easy
like,
place.
I use that analogy, put your oxygen mask on first, look after yourself. You can only be a good mum or support person by being looking after yourself. And it's a really hard thing to do because we're so hardwired into being protector of others, and you got to protect yourself first before you can do that.
I was going to ask you, because 20 years is a long time looking after a group. And so what do you do with self-care for yourself?
I love people. So I love connecting with friends, whether it's at a cafe, going for a walk, or going to the pub, or whatever it is. It's just like people fill my cup.
Awesome.
And I think that's, for me, it's been the gift of that. I've felt safe sharing with my close circle of friends over the years how I'm doing. So that's been really important. I bike. I'm not one of those lycra wearing cyclists. I just bike to and from work, but that kind of, and I bike to the meetings and back, and that just gives me a chance to let that go. And I think I'm quite good at compartmentalizing. I'm there during, the night to midday when we have our meetings. And then when I get home, I'm doing, dad stuff, partner stuff, or I'm lying on the couch having a sleep, whatever it is that at that moment. And I kind of go, that's what I need to do to look after myself. And that, I think, has worked for me, and it's like for many people, they've got really good, really, time bound kind of things that they do. And that's great for them. But for me, it's sort of like seizing the moment. And I've learned the joy of sunshine, but equally the joy of rain smashing into a window on a stormy day. They all are beautiful things. And, that whole thing about connecting with nature can be really helpful. And that's the slog of it all, is that you have to begin thinking about what it is. Like, there's a couple of people from our group who've taken up cold water swimming, so they'll do that every day, something that they've never done before, or they've bought a dog, suddenly got a dog in their life which they never owned before. And it's just about that unconditional love of a pet is really good. They'll take up a craft, they'll take up an activity that they'd never imagined doing.
Wow.
So, there can be little gifts and glimmers of getting through life, just making our way through life with these new skills and kind of finding, I can do that. I can live and grieve at the same time. They can coexist,
Wow.
So we celebrate that sort of stuff. It's really good hearing from people what they do. And it's often a good way to end a meeting as well. So what positive things are you going to do after this? What are you going to do to look after yourself? The hardest ones are with those poor mums who are hurt so badly and are worried so much, but it's always about, they've got to look after themselves, and dads have this is dreadful stereotype, but I think it's kind of works from my observation of 20 plus years of doing this, is dads can have so much, inbuilt kind of rage at the world, but then they'll be out in the garden shed bashing up something, making something, or, we do it differently. And I remember I had one woman ring me saying, I'm really worried about my husband. And I said, well, I'm happy to talk to him if he wants to. And he, so I got to talk to him, and he was the most amazing man. His thing was surfing, so he would go out surfing. He said, all I do, I just cry tears into the ocean, while I was waiting for a break to come. And
Yeah.
He hadn't told his partner that. He hadn't been able to, and, some things that you don't have to tell your partner everything, but
Exactly.
I felt like he was doing as good as he could do.
Yeah.
It's just that he was doing it differently.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. We all kind of do it differently. And that can often be the wobbly stuff that within, whānau that are really struggling with. Yeah. It's allowing that to happen and that every family member knows that they've got each other's back,
Absolutely.
And that's tough. That's really tough,
Yeah, and also permissions to talk. I mean, that's the harder thing as well, because I remember when I was talking to my sister, even though she was in Malaysia, is to let her know any time of the day, she can just let me know. I will make sure that I'm available for her. Yeah, yeah.
Supporting somebody in grief isn't a 9 to 5 thing.
No.
It is a 24/7 thing
Yeah.
for a period of time. And
Yeah.
sometimes, it's hard. At 3 o'clock in the morning, we often have,
Yeah.
our worst kind of thoughts, but also some of our more hard moments,
Yeah.
So, it's if you've got somebody to connect to at different times of the day, to go for it. It's quite the unique experience again. And often I find when people come to support group is they're looking, almost everyone says, when am I going to feel better? And I'd love to be able to say, if you do this, this, and this, you'll feel better straight away.
Yeah.
It's a cumulative thing. So if you do this, this, and this, in time, whatever that may be, you'll fit. And it's not a linear pathway to
Not at all.
happiness. It's just it's that up and down. It's like the slinky going down the stairs. You'll have moments of really compressed feelings of emotion. Then there'll be other times, but it happens. It slowly happens. I slowly felt better.
And I want to share with you with what you just told me earlier about, like with the wife and 2 kids, which you never thought, that could happen. I saw my sister change when she had her very first granddaughter. Sometimes life unfold in itself is going to surprise us in the most, most beautiful way that no one would thought. Even because my sister, she never thought that she could love her grandkids so much. Of course, she never experienced, but she didn't know. And so it gave her joy again. So, yeah.
Exactly. And I kind of I'm forever grateful that in my instance, a friend said to me, "Oh, do you want to come to a book club?" And I went, "Yeah, why?" I'd go to the opening of an envelope, So I went to this book club and Annabelle, my partner, she happened to be there. And from that, we ended up, sort of
Wow.
falling in love. So, so it was just like, but it was so not in the script, of how I thought I was going to be and how how my life was going to go forward. And I think that's amazing. So, so I've got the luxury of having this amazing, rich, full life, and my suicide loss sits all around that, And I think that's the thing that kind of, it hasn't defined me, but it's a big part of who I am and what I'm able to give. I didn't really do any community work, really. I thought about it, but this has drawn me to do this sort of work, that my lived experience. So I think that's quite an amazing thing that I go, they talk about post-traumatic growth, and I probably am quite a good example of that, from being slightly lazy to being focused on this sort of stuff.
And I want to ask you as well, how people can find the Solace group. It's only in Auckland, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an Auckland-based group for anyone suicide bereaved. If you go to Facebook, there's Solace Support Auckland. You can message me that way, and all my contact details are available there. Solace, SOLACE. And we'd love to see you. And we put our notices up there when the meetings are. But it's always good to have people contact me before a meeting, so I can kind of make sure that it's right for you, because sometimes it's not. And if you're early in your loss, it may not be quite the right thing. You might need to wait a few months, and that's hard to hear. We've got to be really careful of the whole group.
Exactly.
And that's part of being a part of a group dynamic. And sometimes grief is such an individual thing, and we've got to be careful of everyone, because we don't want to re-traumatize people.
Absolutely. And what I would do is I can link into all the different services as well.
Yes,
so,
fantastic.
And also information from the mental health foundations about,
And Aoki Tara is just an awesome free Recovery by Suicide Service. Essentially, it's counselling of sorts, different providers there that is specifically trained in suicide bereavement. And I think that's a real gift of a service.
I agree. Yeah. And people also mistaken in thought, I have to be the loved one. No, even if someone is a very close friend, they can still use that service as well.
Yeah, and it might have happened many, many years ago, and you're still entitled to access that service.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Yeah, and I will include other resources and information, especially about community events, so that is being dealt with safely. And I also want to acknowledge the fact that, you work for Mental Health Foundation, which is not our focus today, but there's a lot of information on there.
Yes. mentalhealth.org.nz. And again, my lived experiences, I found myself in that workplace, which I'm really grateful to, and probably wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done all that work. Hope is the most important thing, that you will find peace. And it feels elusive, but it's finding that peace. It's like a nuclear bomb's gone off in your world, and this is the time it takes for the fallout to settle can feel like relentless. It can feel like a slog. So that's why a group like Solace, if you happen to be in Auckland, there are other ones around the country. Mental Health Foundation has a list on the website as well. So, if you happen to live elsewhere, and some people like their online support groups as well. So that means that in the middle of the night, you might be able to connect in with people who are online at that time. Access what you think you feels safe. The good thing about a face-to-face is that you kind of get to know somebody, because it's all about trying to get that connection.
Not isolate themselves.
Yeah, because it's a very isolating, and it's too easy to isolate yourself on a keyboard. And sometimes for instance, how Americans grieve is quite different to how we would here.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah, just from an observation. It doesn't mean say it's wrong, it's just different.
Yeah, different. Yeah. So I really just want to say thank you so much for your time, Mark. It's been so invaluable. It's been my dreams, like having a chance to sit down with you. I just want to say thank you so much. And I also want to thank your work. I think when you say some people, when they say, I think I'm good now, it's time for, not good as, but it serves my purpose. I'm going to move on to something else.
That is the best thing. It's also hard, but it's also the best thing.
Yeah.
And it shows that. And I know that when they turned up, they were like a little bruised and battered bird who might have just hit a glass door or a window, and they're a little bit dazed and confused. And then they kind of are able to recover and, live their life.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.